the duality of freedom versus limitation. These are so often pitted against each other. Freedom, I'm for freedom, maximum freedom. But what you don't understand is that these are two sides of one coin. Especially the libertarian types and certain conservatives who love to tout themselves as champions of freedom. They have such a dualistic notion of freedom that it's silly. Here's the key thing that they don't understand. If you have maximum freedom, what that means is that you're free to do anything, which now that means that you can create limitations. So for example, if we create a government that allows total freedom, absolute freedom to every individual, you might think, well, that would be the ideal situation, right? Wrong, because what you're not understanding is how it's going to circle back around and work as such. If you give everybody in a society infinite freedom, then what's going to happen is that there's going to be a free-for-all battle because everyone's free to do whatever they want, so you're going to have just a clash of agendas. Everyone's going to be fighting everybody else because, hey, everyone's doing whatever they want. You know, like, I can come and take a shit on your front lawn. That's freedom. I could come and slit your throat in the middle of the night. That's freedom. I can be a terrorist. That's freedom. I can build a nuclear bomb and blow it up on your front lawn. That's freedom. That's what freedom means. Total freedom. So if you give every individual total freedom, certain of those individuals, the strongest ones, they will come out on top and they create all sorts of limitations. So for example, if you give everybody in this country total freedom, the most powerful people will use that freedom to enslave the rest of the people, thereby creating limitation upon everybody else, you see? And so what started out as freedom for everybody sounds like a utopia, now has turned into a nightmare hell scenario where 99% of the population is enslaved. That's profound. Contemplate that one right there. That will fuck with your mind. But that's still just the tip of the iceberg of how deep this issue of freedom and limitation goes. So you can actually transcend freedom and limitation to realize freedom as an absolute, freedom with a capital F. This is the freedom of God. So what this means, and this is what God is, this is the very structure of God, is absolute freedom. It's infinite degrees of freedom. So that means that God is free to do absolutely anything with no restrictions whatsoever. God is not constrained by logical or physical laws, not constrained by time, by energy, by anything. There are no restrictions to God. It has literally absolute freedom. So therefore, because it's absolutely free, it, of course, now creates an infinite number of limitations. Because if you're totally free, that means that you're free to create limitation. Because if you exclude limitation from freedom, then you're not actually free. You see? If God couldn't limit itself, it wouldn't actually be free. So sometimes people ask, Leo, why would God put himself into a human body which is so limited? You know, as a human, I can't just like go flying through walls and using Jedi force powers to, you know, to force choke people and stuff like this. I can't lift physical objects with telepathy. I can't do all this stuff. Why am I so limited? If God is so unlimited, why don't I have these freedoms, these powers? You don't understand. It's actually precisely because God has infinite freedom that it also chooses to limit itself and to experience life from all the limited forms. So to be a human being is to be limited in certain specific ways. That's literally what makes a human being. Certain limitations. You have 2 hands, 2 feet, a mouth, a nose, you can speak, you can think. These are the limitations and also simultaneously abilities of a human. A human can't fly. We don't have wings. And you might say, well, wouldn't it be better if humans did have wings? Why didn't God create a human with wings? Because you see, the God is not interested in creating some ultra superhuman that has all capabilities. God is more interested in experiencing living through life from all the possible limitations that there are. Like God is interested in being a human, and then being a donkey, and then being a cat, and then being an ant, and then being a bacteria and experiencing life from all these different perspectives. God is interested in not just being strong, but also being weak, because God doesn't differentiate and put preference on being strong as being better than being weak. You see, to God, it's all the same. God is an embrace of everything. It doesn't discriminate, and it doesn't pick and choose based on your subjective criteria that you use as a human being. You see? So you might think that limitation is this terrible curse. And it sometimes does seem that way from the relative perspective. But ultimately, it's just literally what God is. God is infinite freedom, which of course entails infinite limitation. If you were absolutely free, can you see how you can't have a form? You actually can't have a physical form, because any physical form that you have will still be limited. Even if we take a human being and we give him horns and wings and 25 legs and arms and a brain that's 10 times bigger, even if you give him all that, he's still going to be very, very limited. There's still going to be a bunch of stuff he can't do, given his physiology, given his form. So to have absolute freedom, what that means is formlessness. So be careful what you wish for. If you want absolute freedom, what you're talking about is becoming completely formless, which is basically death. That's what you'll get when you die. You'll get infinite freedom. That's what you had before you were born. You were infinitely free. Then you, as God, you precipitated yourself and gave yourself limitations, which then, here's life. It arose. You get all these limitations. You're living in some particular country, on some particular planet, in some particular universe, within some particular dimension, during some particular era in history. And so you're experiencing a very small sliver of the entire infinite spectrum of possibility. And therefore you're limited. So appreciate your limitedness.